We turn our attention to Mozambique. The newly sworn-in President Daniel Chapo has promised to tighten the state budget by cutting unnecessary spending. Chapo took oath of office in the capital, Maputo, yesterday. The inauguration has been preceded by weeks of violent demonstrations and left more than 300 people dead. The two main opposition parties boycotted the ceremony because they believe that the elections were stolen. The opposition presidential candidate, Venancio Mondlane, has urged his supporters to paralyze Mozambique with protests. For more on the President Chapo's inauguration, we are joined virtually by the Director of the Center for Democracy and Human Rights, Professor Adriano Nuvunga. Prof, it's wonderful to have you. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
In his first speech as the head of state, President Chapo really did sort of put a lot of promises forward, and his big promise was to reduce the number of ministries, eliminate the role of deputy ministers, as well as freezing perks, because as we do know, it's something that really does cost a lot, and the people of Mozambique are not happy with the amount of money that is spent on these perks. But there are also a lot of other pledges. Let's perhaps talk to your interpretation of yesterday's promise of downsizing government from Chapo.
Good morning. I think it's important to read those type of speeches in an inauguration. We have been there before several times where previous presidents on the inauguration day, they make all sorts of promises, but then at the end of their term, nothing has been delivered. It's important to hear that he says he will cut expenditure, unnecessary expenditure, but it was not a speech that ignited the nation. You know, an inauguration speech, you want to hear your president selling a bit of utopia, something new, signaling that there will be development, that there will be jobs for the young people, that the nation will move forward. Then when you focus on cutting ministries, that's a lot of we have been hearing. So it was not enough to ignite the nation, to unify the nation. In fact, it was seen as a deja vu.
Yeah. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it was quite the contrary, because there were protests happening just a couple of streets away from where all these promises were being made, and quite heavy-handed personnel trying to contain some of the disappointment in those protesters, which are being continued to happen and being urged to continue to happen by opposition parties. Perhaps you want to talk to the psyche of Mozambicans at this point. How are they feeling?
Exactly. The inauguration yesterday, it was at odds with the sentiment of the people. It was not consistent with the will of the people. To see Frelimo going on with the inauguration, it is like saying they don't care about what is happening out there. Just yesterday alone, 8 people were killed. Some of them, they were beaten, they were targeted by the police close to where the inauguration was taking place. It was, the inauguration itself, it sounded like a wedding. It was by invitation. No one from the larger population was allowed to be there for security reasons, not for security in terms of protecting the dignitaries, but security because the event itself, it was not safe because people were protesting or they were being denied to protest by the police repression. So the nation was not in the mood for inauguration. The nation is in the mood for addressing the fundamentals, for setting the fundamentals right so that we can bounce back as a nation. The inauguration did not address any of the factors that are leading us to where we are today. It's a highly polarized nation. The situation is so volatile, highly militarized, and anything can happen. Yeah. So people expected that this inauguration would be put on hold and allow the nation to have a constructive, inclusive dialogue, not only about 1, 2, 3 political parties, but addressing the fundamentals. I mean, we have been encouraging Frelimo to learn from South Africa, where the ANC found a way of bringing all the stakeholders in a national unity government. That's what should have, in our view, ignited the nation into a new beginning.
Well, it certainly is. I mean, when one looks at how a lot of international observers, I mean, we see opposition leaders, rights groups, every group that has weighed in on the election has basically criticized them and said that they are fraudulent and that these elections were definitely one that do not stand, and the result is one that is exceptionally questionable. However, Chapo at his inauguration yesterday said that social and political stability is his government's top priority. But Mondlane describes this next phase of protest as the final battle. It's very scary, and you said that anything can change at any moment. And this is the background to what is, I suppose, likely to happen. From your opinion, is this something that could result in a lot more unrest and violence in the coming months?
We have been here before. Mozambique's elections have been fraudulent, and there have been before and after inauguration violent protests. This time, there are important differences. Number one, it is a Maputo-centric demonstrations. Number two, it is a youth-based demonstration that is taking place. So though there is the belief from Frelimo that people will get tired, they seem not to get tired. Though they are being targeted by the police, they continue to say enough is enough. People want change, and they don't see Chapo to represent the change that the people want to see. So we are here to see what is Chapo going to do in terms of reaching out to Venancio Mondlane and forge a new way of working together with key opposition leaders like Mondlane, so that the nation can be back to stability. Failing to do that, we will see parallel structures with Mondlane himself calling himself as the president, Chapo calling the president, and this will further destroy our democratic infrastructure, our social cohesion, which might lead the country to be a failed state, and that would risk the stability of the entire region.
It certainly would, but even before these demonstrations, before the elections, poverty rates in Mozambique have been soaring over the past decade. And, you know, besides everything we've spoken about, economic challenges that Chapo faces are immense, not to mention the predicament in Cabo Delgado. I mean, this is obviously different from the post-electoral crisis because that's been there, and their concurrent nature does diminish prospects for stabilization. President Chapo, has he got the capacity to deal with the economy of Mozambique and, of course, the massive predicament that they have in Cabo Delgado?
Chapo can do that, depending on what he is going to do. If he set things right, he can become a statesman and address the major challenge. The problem here is Frelimo. Frelimo is a liberation movement that became to government through a liberation struggle. They believe that they own the nation, that they own the country, and they control and then they benefit of the political economy. Hence, what we see happening, the Cabo Delgado conflict itself, it is not transparent. It is clear that there's something not good that is happening there. People are saying it's a violent terrorism, but, you know, we know that there is a lot that has to do with Frelimo governance on what is happening there. So it is governance, it is corruption, grand corruption, organized crime, that is stopping the people of Mozambique from moving into a shared prosperity. Whether Chapo will be that person, not sure, because as I said, The problem here is Frelimo, which is a corrupt a political party which is controlled by organized crime. So I'm not sure whether Chapo will be able to confront his comrades within the party and say, all is to end here. Now it's a new beginning for the country where the machinery of the state is not to be there to target citizens, to kill people, but it's to be out there to work, to protect human rights, to protect freedoms, and to allow investors to come back, because only that can bring the investors back.
Indeed, that's the whole thing. Prof, I'm going to leave you now, but a very quick response to this one. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, the only sitting president to actually attend the inauguration. Your reaction to that?
It was good to see President Matamala Ramaphosa, because we always wanted him to be directly involved in helping us solve the crisis. He's coming. It might have given him the right perspective of what's happening here, how volatile the situation is, how dangerous it is, and that anything, it can lead the country into a collapse. And so it's important. That might have given him the right information of where Mozambique is sitting today. He saw it by himself, that it can become a failed state if he does not engage robustly in finding solution with us in Mozambique.
Prof, thanks for weighing in on this. Professor Adriano Nuvunga, the director of the Center for Democracy and Human Rights, speaking about Mozambique's new president, Daniel Chapo, whose inauguration was held yesterday.